Good afternoon. I'm Tim, and you probably know me from Tabletop Terrors, but I am also the co-founder of Absolute Tabletop, and we're an independent RPG publisher, and we're all about writing the stuff that we would use, bringing things from our tabletop to yours. And so today, got some super good news, and I want to share it with everybody, and I want to continue to help educate people on Dragongrin, our campaign setting, because it's getting a lot of attention. And so what I'm going to do today is walk you through Dragongrin past, present, and future, and give you some bullet points on what the world is, the current state of it, and how you can be a part of it today. Now, Barker of Be a Better Game Master is sharing this stream around, so as it shares, you're going to notice he's also going to share two links. One of them is to an awesome article. The big news, if you haven't heard, is that Dragongrin was featured on Geek Sundry. This is a huge deal for us. We're an independent publisher. We've only been at this a couple of years, but you can take a look at that article now. And then the second thing is that there is actually a link to our website with it's basically the Dragongrin page on the site. So you can check out Dragongrin as we do this stream and we walk you through Dragongrin past, present, and future. Oh, I got a wild wispy hair here. You can go check out the books. And that's kind of what I'm going to walk you through, is what exists for Dragongrin, how does it work. But first, if you are a fan of Tabletop Terrors, you know that we don't do a single thing without doing a toast. But this isn't Tabletop Terrors. I've got a blood red monster in honor of Dragongrin, and I want all of you to join me in an Abtabian toast. Are you ready? I want you to raise your drinks. May your dice roll high till the day that you die, and may the day that you die never come. May you gather countless riches, slaying orcs, tarasques, and liches, as we salute the tabletop absolutes. Slanchava. Today we're going to talk about Dragongrin. If you don't know what Dragongrin is, my brother James and I came up with a campaign world about 2 years ago, and our whole philosophy was progress over perfection. It was not about taking 3 years to write a Bible of the world and then introduce it to everybody. We actually started introducing it to everybody just in name and posting things on Facebook and just putting lore out there. And so the genesis of Dragongrin is actually different, I think, than a lot of campaign worlds, because as of right now, there is no finalized, finished campaign setting to hand somebody and say, hey, here's the book you need to run Dragongrin. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the different materials that are out there that are resources for you to really dig into Dragongrin. I'm also going to tell you about what we're going to do with Dragongrin in the future, and I'm going to make sure that you get all of your questions answered today about Dragongrin. Let's see who is here. Oh my gosh, there is a million people here right now. Stephen Back, Josh Glisson, Dill Shoulders, Brandish Gilhelm, Jason Smith, Lee Patterson, Jacob Norman, Nathan Thurston. Also, check out those two links I mentioned. Marquise Hardis is here. Let's see here. All right, here's what we're going to do. The first book that you need to own if you want to play in Dragongrin is our most recent book. It's called The Copper Jackals. Here's the boilerplate explanation of Dragongrin. Evil reigns. The Dismembered Lord extends his reach over the land. So this is essentially the elevator pitch for the world is, what if Sauron won and the Fellowship failed? What would the world look like 20 years later? And so the thing that we posit is it doesn't look that bad. The fictional Dark Lord we have in place is called the Dismembered Lord, and he essentially is, I don't know, I always imagine the Dismembered Lord as being like a mix of like Doctor Doom, the Red Skull, and Hitler. He's very shrewd, he's very smart, he's He's not stupid. And in fact, I think that one of the things that's interesting about Dragongrin is, for many, the world is a better place, but for few, it's bad and they're oppressed. But truly, what if your freedoms are challenged? What if you don't decide what your future holds? Isn't that true oppression? And so, the Copper Jackals is the first book that I think has all of the lore that you would need to run a game in Dragongrin. And we came out with several books and slowly built the world as we went. But the Copper Jackals is basically, as heroes die beneath the steel of the Dismembered Lord, as the free lands kneel before his shadow, the dark forces are not unopposed. There are those who do the impossible in Dragongrin because heroes are not welcome there. They are called by many traitors. Some call them champions. Others call them fools. But they are Copper Jackals. And basically using this mystical metal called Titan Copper, they are able to stand beyond what a normal adventurer would be able to do using special abilities to fight the Dismembered Lord. So the Copper Jackal supplement is this 130-page book full of extra boons. They're called Copper Boons, and they're basically different feats that you get to add on top of your normal character. So if you're looking for epic Avengers, Expendables type action, this is the book for you, because it gives you an awesome timeline of a lot of events that happened in Dragongrin. This is the only Dragongrin book that contains a timeline. This also gives you the 11 grisly truths of Dragongrin. And this is the first book where we released, hey, here is a snippet of the World Bible. So in this book, you can generate your own action-packed missions. There's this really cool adventure generator that I think is second to none in there. It's fully compatible with 5th edition, over 50 hours of playtesting. You basically just become this awesome, rugged hero as part of the Copper Jackals with hundreds of player options. So get this book. This is the Dragongrin book that you need to own if you want to run a game in the world, because it's got the most lore and the most flavor, I think, that exists so far. We're also taking questions. Let's take some questions. Jacob Norman says, my eyes are vibrating from 2 monsters today, Absolute Zero and Ultra Black. Matt Click is also here. Jake, James and I, that's why we call energy drinks eye bleeders. For like several years ago, James lived with me, and we would work on, this was like the genesis of Tabletop Terrors. We were just trying to launch the channel, and we would crack open those Rockstar Zeros. Oh my God. We would drink 2 in a row, and we'd just be like, ready to make content. That's how we made 500 intros to video series and then never made the video series. Like professionals. Jason Smith, Venom Watermelon over here. Sweet. Dan Dingman is here. Carol Dunster. Marquise, are you answering any question? Sure. Hit me. Hit me with your best shot. Shields of War, Spencer Shields is here. Dirk Van Claveren. Brandish Gilham says, this reminded me, had to grab a few AT t-shirts. Oh, dude, grab some Absolute Tabletop t-shirts for show. And Nathaniel Tice is here. So the second book you need to pick up, if you really want to run some games in Dragongrin, the second book that I think is important would be a book called Deep Vault. Deep Vault, this is an interesting story. I want to tell you about Deep Vault. James and I knew we wanted to make Dragongrin, but we didn't know where to start. And Barker and Matt were really, really cool about letting us sort of do what we needed to do to create the world. Deep Vault started as an adventure. Deep Vault started as an adventure, and it was going to be this super dungeon, and we were like, yeah, it's going to be awesome. And then the more we started kind of writing it, James and I had some conversations, and we were like, can we make a super dungeon? We don't really know the world like as well as we need to, so we can just make this zoomed in super dungeon, or we can make the concept of a super dungeon and then like zoom out and make this a sort of sampler platter of the region and make it a campaign world. So the way that Deep Vault works is that Deep Vault itself is actually this ancient, massive, sentient tunnel system in the world of Dragongrin. It's underground. It was created by these titans long, long ago, and it's essentially this vault of their technology, which we thought was kind of cool, and it was sealed eons ago. Now, this is Deep Vault. The whole book talks about this region of Sphere Below. It's 39 pages, so it's like 40 pages. It's got 3 new monsters in there. It's got a ton of distinct locations throughout the Sphere Below. It's got 18 plot hooks. It's got all this different stuff. You need to run stuff in Sphere Below. But we knew that we had to start somewhere. So this was it. And we created a couple of sub-races, and we created like familiars. We created this demi-plane and this... It's all this stuff just kind of packed in. I think Matt Click said it the best when he said, Deep Vault is a thick slab of gonzo fantasy marinated in Magitech sci-fi, grilled over a smoldering bed of Tabletop Terrors charcoal. And that was the Deep Vault was where we were like, we're going hard in the paint. Because up till that point, we had never put forth like, hey, we want this world to be a little crazy. And so Matt and Barker were super bros about it, because we're like, hey, what if the ocean is actually the constantly regenerating blood of ancient titans in this area? And they're like, yeah, man, cool. We're like, I almost at one point wanted to be like, James, we got to try something even crazier and just see if they're even reading this stuff. But anyway, Deep Vault is another really good piece of flavoring to kind of just take a bite of and get yourself acclimated with the world of Dragongrin. Let's take some questions. Marquis says, is the Dismembered Lord an oracle, or does he have the ability to alter time somehow? Yes to both. Steve Fillmore joined. Joshua Law. Chris Wilhelm. So the Dismembered Lord is getting a lot of attention right now, because let's talk about the future of Dragongrin. We've been talking about the past, and we're talking about the present, which was the Geek and Sundry article, which Jim Moreno did an incredible job with the article, and we're featured next to the likes of Dungeon World and Numenera. Like, that's incredible. But the future is we are writing a Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin, which is the campaign setting, which is going to be an atlas of inspiration. It's going to be compatible with 5th edition, but many of the concepts are inspirational and designed to be system agnostic, so that you can pick up this book and flip through it, and you can't help yourself. You will have to want to just get into the world and play it. We want you to flip through and go, oh, I want to run that game. Like the thing we want the problem to be, we want to create an issue in your life with this book. I want to create a problem for you, and I want that problem to be that you have too many ideas for games to run, and you're in too many campaigns and one-shots, because it's so easy and so fun to capture the feel and the tone of Dragongrin and just run it like this. That is what Dead Man's Guide is all about, and that's what we're going to do. So the Dismembered Lord is getting a ton of love right now, because James and I are having conversations. So far, every conversation we've had about him has been broadcast in the last 3 weeks, but there are some things that we are deciding, we want him to be hyper powerful, super powerful. Definitely, I think we want to stay away from very blatant gonzo, like cheap, and when I mean cheap, I mean no threats or cost time travel. So we want there to be time altering elements, but if the Dismembered Lord can do that sort of thing, it comes at great cost. So it's not like he has a time machine or a time dial where you're just going to have this awful world that is laced with time travel everywhere and paradoxes, Just from a very real perspective, I think that some people might like that, but a lot of game masters would shy away from that, and players, because it's difficult for anything to have meaning if it can all be tweaked and hand-waved as time travel. So to me, there's something interesting about altering the fractals of time, altering timelines, changing things, but making it come at a great cost, so that it's not something you can do readily and easily. So you'd have to decide if and when you were going to do it. It comes with great danger and great risk. Great cost is what I meant to say. Let's see here. Absolute Tabletop says, hey Barker, Matt, crazy idea. Dragongrin is actually Aeronaut's roommate from after he and NK split up. That harbinger's a home wrecker. Oh, that's awesome. Chris Wilhelm says, I feel like Numenera should have been on the list. It's like the biggest indie press out there. I would have loved to see something else. Oh, shouldn't have been on the list. You feel like Numenera was a little bit of a like, hey, it's a little too big. Joshua Law, are there rocks or similar in Dragongrin? Are they unique in some way? So here's an interesting question about the world. Yes, they're definitely rocks. And here's the bottom line is that there is going to be a home for everything in Dragongrin, because the way that we're setting up the regions, you're sitting there as a dungeon master, it's going to be very simple for you to decide where things live. That's how I kind of think of it in my head. Where does this live? I want to run Curse of Strahd, but I want to do it in Dragongrin. Where would I do that? Well, it's going to be really easy. It's going to be very simple, because the thing that we are really trying to nail is the tone and feel of each region. So if you think about the very, very, very beginning of the Patrick Rothfuss novel, The Name of the Wind, where they talk about the 3 kinds of silences, and it's basically like there are these silences wrapped in an even bigger silence. For me, all of these regions are going to have a distinct tone. But so that we don't suffer from rifts-itis, where it's like, what is your personality, bro? It's going to be wrapped in this overarching tone and feel of the overall world. So there are going to be layers of tone and feel. What does that matter to you as a dungeon master? Well, it's going to be basic and simple to say, oh, okay, there are a couple of choice locations that I could definitely run Curse of Strahd, and it would just work. It would work really perfect. So my first initial 2 thoughts, the Wailing Grey right outside of Grin, or the southern part of the Sphere Mountains. Boom, you can drop Ravenloft right in there, no problem. You want to run any, like Keep on the Borderlands. You could run Keep on the Borderlands in Dragongrin simply because the way that these regions are going to be laid out, it's very clear what the tone and feel is for each one. So you can go ahead and drop, hey, here are a couple places you could drop that. And it's going to be very simple to see. All of that to say, there is everything in Dragongrin. The second part of your question, are they unique in some way? James and I have to be very careful that we don't try to reinvent every wheel. So a rock, yes, there'll probably be some like tiny little things, tiny unique identifiers, like a little bit different in Dragongrin. But hopefully we can achieve that through the tone and feel of where they are in the setting. So yes, you could definitely have rocks. I would probably say they'd be very prevalent in the Sphere Mountains. But then if you wanted to go a little crazy with it, you could put them in Erazios, which is like South America, and have like these huge parrot-esque or toucan-esque rocks that are enormous. Just make them look cool and not like, follow your nose. But that's kind of a twist where you could throw it on there, and hopefully the regions will make that easy to do for you. Dirk says, plot twist, the Dismembered Lord was just dismembered from his golf club, and he was much angrier about it than they thought he would be. He's corporate America. Marquis says, do you have plans, if the Dead Man's Guide Kickstarter is successful, to do adventure paths in Dragongrin? So, the idea is to use this product we're creating. They're called adventure kits. And adventure kits are, to me, it's the middle ground between a fully written adventure and campaign, like just prep notes. So these adventure creation kits give you a toolbox and a location that specifically is for a certain part of the world. So we're not making these setting agnostic like we have in the past. In the past, you've gotten a horror at Misty Meadows, which is absolutely setting agnostic. It just takes place in anywhere. You have Sewers Under Sandwall, etc. Those things that we've had, we purposefully didn't set them in any of our 3 campaign worlds. The adventure creation kits are absolutely going to be set in our campaign worlds. So, for instance, you have Dead Man's Guide and it's out and it exists. Okay? Let's say the first adventure kit that comes out is Leith. It's from the Dragongrin frozen region of Leith, and it's called Oath of the Frozen King. Okay? It then has this awesome map by Heroic Maps that is a specific real location, a canonical location in Leith. It's got, the beginning of it is just some core stuff about the adventure, some things you need to know. And then when you flip through, there are 5 encounters. Very stripped down, cool, basic encounters, like here's a roleplay encounter, here's a combat encounter, here's and here's a puzzle, that kind of thing. So there's 5 encounters, and then there are locations on the map. So say the Frozen Throne Room. The encounter will just have quick bullets on how to run it, the challenges, etc. The location on the map is going to have a listing. So this will be in the location section. It'll say, now again, this is all specific to Leith. So you have Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin, and you're like, hey, I want to run something. Well, you can run this in Leith. You go to the locations, and it'll say, say the Frozen Altar. And then there'll be sights, sounds, and sensations. Just quick things you can pull from that area. So here's the idea behind the Adventure Creation Kit. You take a location that you have the sights and the sounds and the sensations for, and you can drop any of the 5 encounters in there. This way, Marquise runs Oath of the Frozen King totally differently than Jake Norman, totally different than Josh Law, totally differently than Chris Wilhelm. You can all run the same thing, starting in different locations, putting different encounters different places, put the trap here, you put the roleplay encounter up front, all this stuff. But then, at the end of it, there's a toolbox that has basic, quick, inspirational stuff like trinkets, treasures you might find in that region, inspirational phrases that kind of go along with it. So, the long answer is 4 of us, right? It's Tim, James, Matt, and Barker. That's it. There's 4 guys. We're making these books one at a time. We absolutely don't have the manpower right now to make adventure paths. Because when we do a just Sewers Under Sandwall, that takes like 3 months total for us to draft, write, get art for, lay out, edit, ship, all this stuff. We just don't have time. All we would be doing is adventure paths at that point. So the middle ground for us is huge release, like Campaign Master, followed by Adventure Creation Kit or smaller release. Something like Weapon Master or something like that. But that's the idea. So the answer is no adventure paths, but instead adventure creation kits. So it's like, run this location in Leith. And eventually we hope to get enough in the hopper to where, I don't know, eventually what would be amazing is you have Dead Man's Guide, and there's an adventure creation kit for every single region with maps. And then eventually multiple locations in the region that you can link together, and there's your adventure path. So, I mean, that's as good as we're going to do with 4 guys doing this part-time, I think. And I think it's a good balance. Joshua Law says, who wins in a fight, Dismembered Lord or Strahd von Zarovich? I would say the Dismembered Lord. I picture him as super powerful. Super powerful. So, I don't know. Maybe that's just because, I don't know, I'm a pretty objective person. I think the Dismembered Lord. Mike Lasham is here. Scott Hustis is here. Lee Patterson says, Rifts has regions that have different tones and styles of games. Exactly. The key is wrapping them together so it's not like sci-fi and then I walk across the border and all of a sudden there's a bunch of cowboys. Chris Williams says, rocks used to be the equivalent to parakeets for Titans. They're actually fabricated and no one knows exactly how they reproduced. They seem to have surpassed their original design. Perfect. And that's how you make a rock different in Dragongrin. Marquise says, instead of paths, we're getting mini adventures then, yes? And that's the thing, yes, Marquise, but they're not even full adventures. It's a list of things that you put together. It's like, you know what it is? You know what it is? It's Blue Apron. We're giving you a Blue Apron kit for adventures so that everyone can kind of do it a little differently. Let's see here. Steve Filmer says, rocks taking the mythological place and importance of feathered serpents in an Aztec, Mayan, or Olmec type area would be simple and for well. That's awesome. Lee Patterson said, how to be a better monster master. Barker has tons of book ideas, and that's the other thing we learned is, talking about Dragongrin, when we started out as Tabletop Terrors Publishing. That was before Absolute Tabletop existed. So I'm going to jump way back to the past again and talk about Tieflings of Dragongrin. Tieflings of Dragongrin was James and I trying to make a thing exist that didn't exist. Hey, I want to write RPGs. So, I mean, it was like, we went to Gauntus, one of the artists that we still work with today, and I said, hey man, can we use some of your art? I want to make a book. He said, yeah, here's a list of stuff, you can use any of these. And the reason why Tieflings of Dragongrin came out first, there were Tieflings that was it. I had tieflings to work with. That was one of the things in the art pile I could use, that there were like 4 or 5 of, and I was like, all right, tieflings it is. So sometimes you've got to just work with what you have. And to me, that's why I think the original Star Wars films are so amazing, is because there were limitations, and you have to really use your imagination and think way outside the path. And so that's what we had to do. So Tieflings of Dragongrin is another book you can pick up. It's basically unique tiefling subraces. There's like there's racial spells. We're trying a thing in there. So there's like 6 new spells you get just inherently as a race. There's really detailed information on each tiefling. I'm really proud with the lore that we wrote. I think it's very unique. I think it's cool. The Granach Thane tieflings specifically, where arcane gastronomy, they're really into food, but they're like a warrior race. And then the Vylok, which they revere song and play and theater because of the way that they, and I don't want to spoil it for, but it's the way they found their freedom. So that book was 18 pages. That book was 18 pages, and James and I wrote it ourselves. I laid it out, and it's still for sale right now. So if you want to see the very genesis of Dragongrin, just the concepts of like, hey, we want to make a world, that is just boom. You should check that out right now. Nicholas Ashmore says, rocks, what are they? They are large mythical birds. Very, very large mythical birds. Usually portrayed as some sort of eagle or hawk, like a really, really big bird. Lee Patterson's, I have Tieflings of Dragongrin. I liked the flavor in it. I enjoyed the art too. Thanks, man. It's progress over perfection. It's how we started our YouTube channel, and it's how we started Tabletop Terrors publishing, and then eventually those core beliefs and processes work their way into Absolute Tabletop. Every time we come out with something else, we want something to be better. And it's not something we just have to stop and go, all right, guys, what are we going to make better this time? I just think it's how we're all built. We love making high-quality books. We love making high-quality products of all kinds. And so we're constantly pushing ourselves. So thank you. Appreciate that. Let's see here. Chris Wilhelm, how to be a better armor master. Barker's got one kicking around called Be a Better Tavern Master, which is legit. Dan Dingman says, what is your plans for art in some of these future releases, wink? So we're going to be doing art we're going to be kickstarting the book, and we will be reaching out to artists sooner rather than later, because we've gotten advice that, listen, when you're asking people for money, have your ducks in a row, and don't just say, yeah, so can you lend us like $40, Dad? Because I want to get some art for my book. God. No, you have to say, we want to get this many pieces of art. We're working with these artists. It's going to cost this much. This stretch goal gets you here. So Dan, you can definitely be in the running for one of the artists we contact, as far as the Kickstarter stuff. But yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. And again, sooner rather than later, we have to start figuring out what art we need so then we can do all the things I just described to you. Chris Wilhelm says, I remember working on Tieflings and Trap Smiths. It's cool to see the evolution. Chris Wilhelm of Drop Dice and Marquise are both in a company called A Point of Inspiration. And A Point of Inspiration has been helpful in many ways along the journey of Absolute Tabletop. They're incredible playtesters. They're brilliant writers, creative guys, excellent role players. So this is what I need you to do. I need you to find A Point of Inspiration on Facebook. I need you to go and like them, because I think it was weekly. I think it still is weekly. They come out with their own lore, custom races. They've done custom classes. Very good stuff, and I mean that. So check A Point of Inspiration out. Absolute Tabletop says, that's why I think the original Star Wars movies are so amazing. Wipes away tear. I'm just so happy. Barker. Brandish Gilhelm joined again. Lee Patterson says, how did you come up with the name Dragongrin? Was it just 2 words out together or what? All right, so check it out. Quick version, it sounded cool. Long version, it sounded cool, and I thought other people were going to think it was stupid. And if you check out our YouTube channel, on the Tabletop Terrors YouTube channel, we do a world-building podcast called Damage Reduction. The first episode is Why Is It Called Dragongrin? And I talk about how you got these cool, these adult campaign names, like, or campaign world names. Aeronoth. That sounds legit. Like, that's a Blizzard property. Or Enkea. And I was like, we can't be Dragongrin. That's too backyard. That's back alley campaign naming. And so I was like, it's Dragongrin, but it's formally called Arthenvale. Because I'm an adult too, like you guys. And then slowly people just started kind of calling it Dragongrin. And then I admitted to Jim's like, dude, I thought people were going to think it was stupid. He's like, no, that's a cool name. And then everybody just started calling it Dragongrin, and Arthenvale kind of fell off the map. So it just sounded cool. And here's how it started. Dragongrin. Oh, that's neat. Google search. No one has it. Done. Lisa, he said, I have fat fingers. Oh, Chris Wilhelm said, a point of inspiration just did a release today. Brad Proctor's here. What's going on? Lee Patterson says, you have too many videos in my watch later list. Over 1,500 videos. Oh, so many videos. Yeah, man, check it out. Just go to our YouTube channel, type in damage reduction, and it's the first episode. So the final book I want to talk about, and then we'll wrap it up with some final questions here, is Trapsmiths of Dragongrin. Trapsmith of Dragongrin is the second book we made. Now, this is still what we were with Marblemouth. Tabletop Terrors Publishing. This is before Absolute Tabletop. And Barker actually helped with this book. This is the first, like, pseudo, like, collab. Nate did some editing. Matt did some editing. Just keeping it from being awful. They really helped save the book. But it's basically 28 pages of traps and trap makers. That was the thing. Now, Tim, why did you do Trapsmiths of Dragongrin? Why didn't you just do a traps book? Because I was still working with Gauntus. James and I still had that. And the only art we had access to were people. So again, I'm pulling a George Lucas, olden days. It was 1982. And I had all this art of people. And I was like, I want to do a traps book, but I don't have art of traps, and I can't afford to pay an artist to make me any, and I'm not a good artist. So what do I do? And then I was like, James, I got this crazy idea. What do you think? What do you do with Trapsmiths? And we talk about the people that make the traps, and then I just throw in some gritty, blueprinty, and blood, stuff. And he's like, all right. So that's what Trapsmiths is. It's 5 Trapsmith character concepts. So there's 5 different Trapsmiths that are like, here are the people who built these traps. And we tried to make it so that each Trapsmith has a trap that is distinct to them. So there's like detailed information about the Trapsmith. Like Pendle Grung is this like half dragon, and he makes death machines. He purposefully makes traps that like kill people in painful ways. But then you have like there's all different kinds. There's the fisherman who makes traps that catch people, and then there's like a father and daughter team who make traps that are like part of the Trapsmith Guild, so they don't kill people and stuff like that. And it's all in there, but it's designed to allow you to also have, there's 5 traps, so 1 for each Trapsmith, and all of them have multiple loadouts, different variations, different ways to disarm it, and all this other stuff. So it's a really cool book. That one's 28 pages, and you can see how it goes. It's Tieflings has 18 pages. Trapsmiths has 28 pages. Deep Vault's 39, and Copper Jackals 130. So you can see the trend. So anyway, I wanted to tell you guys about all those books for Dragongrin, and there's one more. There's one more book, but wait, I'm going to take some questions, then I'm going to tell you about a book that you can use in your real life to help you. Let's see here. Jacob Norman says, Chris Wilhelm gave a beholder a dragon grin in my Copper Jackal game, one of the first, Temple of the Forgotten. He gave him a dragon grin. Locrius of Planetoid, the rock band, actually was talking when we were doing like a session 0 for a campaign we were going to run, was it was going to be a disease that makes you like have this horrible grimace that the poor typically get. So there are all kinds of different things in there. Jacob Norman says, asterisk, technically, it was Chris's character. He's awesome and all, but I don't know how well he or any of us would stand against the beholder. So Dragongrin. It's going to have a campaign setting called Dead Man's Guide. It's going to be this year. We're going to kickstart it later this year. And get the Copper Jackals, get Deep Vault, get the Tieflings of Dragongrin and Trapsmiths of Dragongrin. But there's one more book I want to talk about, then we're going to wrap up here. There's one more book. This book is near and dear to my heart, and I remember how difficult it was to make this actually happen. But a Cookbook of the Realms, Volume 1. So our world, not our campaign settings, but our world in which these campaign settings are housed, is called Arbitron. And it's populated with innumerable races and cultures, right? But we wanted to do this thing where this Anthony Bourdain of Arbitron, Arlen Benjamin, is basically a bard. He's a bard of food, and he's a connoisseur of the world's food. So this is his journey as he journals along the way, basically the meals he's had, the different ingredients, the cooking tools, and then it's got lore in there from Ankea, which technically, unless I'm mistaken, this is the only published book by Absolute Tabletop that you can get official Ankea lore in. It's light, and it's about food, so it's not like the deep recesses of the, it's none of that. But it's cool. But, and in addition to the lore and the mechanics, because these recipes in-game actually are statted out. So if you want to, in your inns and taverns throughout your world, if you want to have like, hey, when they eat this, this happens. Or, when the players have this meal or drink this, it has effects. So it's got 5th edition compatible effects and things that happen when these characters eat these fictional meals from Aeronoth, Ankea, and Dragongrin. In addition to that, there are actual recipes. So there's like 40 pages of lore, game mechanics, locations, plot hooks from this bardic cook, this bardic chef, Arlen Benjamin. But there are 14 real recipes that are flavored and skinned to be like fantasy stuff. Now, I think this is the most underrated, underused book that we've put out. Because I can promise you the chocolate chip cookie recipe in this book is to die for, and you will not be sorry. There are appetizers in this book that are absolutely insane. Okay? It's crazy. Also, to me, there is the best dessert I think that exists around the holidays. It is this special kind of toffee. It was a secret recipe for a while, and I never really shared it with anybody, nobody, and I put it in a book to be published, and it's out there. It's got ways to, during like the end of the book, here's what's interesting. The end of the book, in addition to like, there's like 18 restaurant ideas, but at the end of the book, there are different holidays or holy days in the realm, including like dessert recipes, 6 real tips on how to cook a turkey, and then a bonus holiday song with real sheet music. So you gotta check out Cookbook of the Realms. It's so cool. It's got in-game lore, and it also has a ton of real recipes that are delicious. So anyway, but that's technically got Dragongrin lore. And here's a funny thing. One of the tools in the game is a fire pit from Pendle Grung of Trapsmiths, and in that fire pit, it can turn into a trap. So we thought that was kind of cool. Nate Vanderzee is here. Chris Williams says, get the t-shirt. Chris says, I have to get that so I can cook some of the Ankea food. My character in Marquise's game is a chef. Chris, you need to get this book, man. Matt Click says, the cookbook was the craziest deadline. First and last time we ever released 2 books in 2 weeks. Here's the thing. Let's talk about that cookbook and its deadline just for a little bit. It was right before I was going away on my anniversary. So I was getting ready to go on my anniversary, and every one of our projects, we choose a project manager. So it's either Barker, Matt, or Tim and James. And the project manager makes the final calls, directs people's workflow, and makes sure the book gets done on time. Well, we had just finished... What did we just finish? Deep Vault, I think. I think it was Deep Vault and then the cookbook. Like, boom, boom. So we were dead. we were dead from default. Like, it was like, oh my God, because it's a 39-page book when we're used to putting out like 28-page books and 18-page books, which doesn't sound like a big jump, but that's a big jump. And so, default, which also had a full redesign of the pages and all that stuff. Anyway, so we put out default, and it's like, okay, time to put out the cookbook. And it was because when we first started, we were like, we're going to put out a book every 2 weeks, not realizing that some books are huge. And so I remember getting into this huge argument with James because I was the worst. And I've gotten a lot better, but I was the worst at adding stuff after the writing deadline. And so that Vilock sheet music and Christmas Carol we talked about, I added it at the end of, dude was laying out the book, and I'm like, hey man, I have this thing I want to add. Oh God, that caused such problems. And Barker and Matt were kind of just trying to keep hands off and let James and I argue about it, and they chimed in, but they were like, yo, these guys were fighting, I'm not gonna get in the middle of it. And then eventually we did put the Christmas Carol in, and it was so funny because I was like, no, it's done, it's finished. James was waiting on me for one last thing of the sheet music because there was an error. So after he was finished, he's like, hey man, I need you to fix this. So all that said and done, I made James stay up till like 2 a.m. that night right before release to add this Christmas Carol because the formatting was off. So it was really interesting. But to me, the interesting thing is that Dragongrin has been created piecemeal over time, but I think it's the best way to go because as we write Dead Man's Guide, we have a really good, slow-cooked idea of what the world is, how it works, how it functions, running games in it, other people running games in it. You know, I was making the joke, I was like, dude, this is the most well-received campaign setting that has no campaign guide that I've ever seen in my life. And so we'll answer a couple more questions. Joshua Law says, does the Dismembered Lord do paleo or is he gluten-free? I don't know if he has a mouth. I don't know. We'll see. Matt says, I was laying out the cookbook the day Deep Vault came out after staying up all night doing Deep Vault. Jenga's Christmas. Oh, man. I can tell you that I have never enjoyed an anniversary more, though, up to that point, because it was like a feeling of a weight being off my shoulders. And a lot of people got the cookbook, and they really enjoyed it, and that was rewarding. But, so anyway, that's Dragongrin, past, present, and future. Told a couple of cool stories about the world. Check out the Geek and Sundry article, and if you have some time, if you're a player or a game master who knows about Dragongrin, you like Dragongrin or Absolute Tabletop, the comments at the bottom of that article are a great place to show that appreciation. So go check it out. You can also check out absolutetabletop.com/Dragongrin and get any of the books that I was talking about today. In addition, you can also review the books that you have. If you want to help us out on our site, there's a review mechanism. But we're excited for Dead Man's Guide. We're excited for Dragongrin to be in the world in its own campaign guide, and that Kickstarter is coming later this year. Yeah, it's been a great stream. I love all of you guys. Let's see what else here. Chris Wilhelm says he drinks paleo shakes through his nose holes. That's right. Anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me. If you're not a part of the Absolute Tabletop Facebook group, you got to go be a part of that, because there are a ton of Dragongrin games going on in there. There are Dragongrin encounters, side games, Drake Warren of the RPG Construct, Alan Holloway of Check for Traps, Chris Wilhelm of Drop Dice, Marquise Hardis. These are all people that they're consistently running games in Dragongrin. I'm sure I've missed a few, but it's great that there's too many to name. So if you're interested in using one of those books, we actually just had a scenario where someone messaged me last night and says, hey, I want to learn more about Dragongrin, any encounters or games going on. I posted an interest post in the group, and I think within a couple of hours, he was plugged in somewhere to actually try a game in Dragongrin. So, anyway, thank you for the support. It's because of you that we even got the notice and the recognition. Oh, and Chris Wilhelm says he's got one coming up next week. Dragongrin game. But it's because of you. It's because of you. And thank you for taking the interest, taking the time, and we love you guys. So we'll keep you posted, and I guess that's it. Good afternoon.